Well, I've decided to live dangerously. I'm going to go ahead and do the full assembly before we put the lathe on. So I'm comfortable with the way I've aligned these two bases, and we're using these machine surfaces as the reference. And I've already found out that this side is not square to this machine surface, but that's okay. I mean, this is what matters, so that's what we've aligned everything to. If it doesn't work, I think I can just enlarge the bolt holes if we run into a problem, but it's going to be so hard to do this with a lathe on top. I think it's worth taking the risk, so that's where we're at. Okay, I did a couple test holes for our screws. So we've got a 5/32 and a 3/16, and here's our 4mm screw that we're going to use. So the 5/32 is a perfect fit. So if everything was perfectly aligned, that would be the way to go. But I'm going to go ahead and use the 3/16 hole here. That way we have a little bit of adjustment for error, which I think will be important, and we're just using a Whitney punch. This is 16 gauge sheet metal, and that's pretty much the limit for this size hole with this punch. So, all right, there we go. All the screws lined up perfect the first try. Would you believe that? Man. Okay, but we do have a bozo, and this is a repurposed piece of sheet metal, and I thought I had plenty of material, but somewhere along the line I stretched the measurements, so we're a little short. We didn't make it to the top, and we've got enough that the bottom will be fine, but we're going to have a gap at the top. It's just the way it is. It's not going to hurt anything, but it would have been nice to have a piece that fit all the way up. Well, we got a little bit of a problem. So this may come as a surprise, but these imported cabinets are not perfectly square. And of course I cut my sheet metal perfectly square. So I'm just going to compromise a little bit and shift it around to try to get the gaps somewhat even. I mean, it's just a shelf, so it'll be okay, but a little disappointing. I think I already mentioned this is repurposed galvanized sheet metal. It's 16 gauge, and it's got a nice rolled over hemmed edge on one edge, so that's perfect for the front edge of the shelf. It's about a 1/2 inch hem on there. There's how it looks with the shelves in there. I did run out of this square material, or rectangular tube material. The only piece I had left had this splice in it, but it's actually pretty well done, and it's nice and straight. So, and it's under the chip pan, so I mean, it is what it is. Time to disassemble and paint everything, except for the galvanized. I'm going to leave that just plain galvanized. Grade 8 Caterpillar bolts. Total overkill, but smoke them if you got them. Erector set's going back together. We got our leveling feet, extensions, all on there. Just got to get everything put back on. Got all the pieces painted up. The erector set lathe base is almost ready. We've got everything bolted on, tightened down, lined up. So I've been using just all leftover scrap materials to build this. So my metal came up a little short here in the back. So that's one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a filler strip in there. But I've got to run up to the store, and I'm going to pick up one of those automotive flanging tools, so I can put a little strip of metal in here and put a flange on it so that everything will stay in alignment, and I'll probably just pop rivet these together. We'll see when we get there. So I got that to finish. And then, I don't want to get ahead of myself. The next step is going to be the chip pan. So I'm going to temporarily lift the lathe off the original wooden stand, slide the chip pan out, and make sure that it fits here. I mean, I've measured and measured and remeasured and leveled and aligned and so forth, but you never know, right? So the chip pan will be a good template to make sure all the holes line up and so forth. And I'm going to put some adhesive back rubber along here. The pads for the lathe mount are slightly higher, so I want to have something to fill that gap in, and it also work as like a sound absorbent. So I want to do that. I've already ordered the material; it's not here yet. And then while we're doing that, there's no drain on this chip pan, and I don't know if I'll ever run flood cool it, but I want to put a drain in there just so it's there. I may not ever use it, but I mean, if I'm ever going to, this is the time to put that drain in. And I want to put it probably right in this area here. Back up a little bit, which would be kind of like under this part of the lathe bed. You know, that's generally where your coolant's going to be concentrated, you know, near the chuck. Let's go over to the bench and I'll show you what I'm scheming on there. So I want to metal form a little sump. So this is a new adventure for me. I've never done any metal forming. I've watched a couple of videos and it looks pretty straightforward. So I've got a couple chunks of aluminum here, 90 millimeter by 120 millimeter. These were, they're actually hard drive blanks. So they would mill out the whole inside and the outside, put in screw holes and so forth, and that was the enclosure for a hard drive. And I got a bunch of these from a local machine shop that was closing down, and they had a pallet of these things, and I grabbed like a half a bucket of them. So good material. But anyway, so you can see what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna mill out a pocket here, 1/4 inch deep, and I'm just gonna use a 1/2 inch end mill, and I'm going to leave the corners rounded. And then, so this will be the female, and then for the male die, I just got a piece of 1/4 inch aluminum here, and I've already cut it out, and I just used the belt sander, just rounded the corners off. So I'll probably just super glue it to this one rather than try to mill out and do a negative corner rounding. And this only has to work one time. So I'll probably just super glue that on there, get this milled out, and then we'll run a test piece and see what happens. I'm going to make the sump a separate piece, and then I'll just cut a square hole out in the chip pan and probably put in some machine screws and some sealant of some sort. But first thing I'm going to do is find out if this metal forming is going to work. And obviously we'll put this in the press. And I've got some brass, which I think would be better. So, and I might try steel also, but probably be easier just to show you guys when we get to that point. So let me get this milled out, and that'll be next. Did I forget to mention this? I'm leaving a 1/4 inch between the male and female parts of our die here. Here's our completed stamping dies. So this side, actually both sides turned out fine. This was pretty easy to do. I didn't bother filming it. So it's a 1/4 inch deep pocket. And then this is our raised piece that we super glued onto the other plate. And of course, there was an issue. So when I glued this on, not only did I put it on upside down because there's more bevel on this side, not only did I get it upside down, but I got it crooked, and that super glue adhered much faster than I was expecting it to. So I had to heat it up, pry it apart, and do it a second time. So it came out okay. It's fine. All right, time to go do a test. So here's our first test piece, and this is some pretty thin galvanized sheet metal. It's about, oh, I'm going to guess 26, maybe 28 gauge, pretty light stuff. And it was no effort at all to press it, but as you can see, as it's pressing it, it stretches the outer perimeter and pulls it in. But it's not bad. So that actually came out halfway decent. All right, so that was the first piece. So then I figured, well, since it's stretching it in, let's try a little bigger piece so it has more resistance from stretching. So that was worse. I thought for sure this would have been better. So that one's kind of a fail. Although you could hammer it out, it'd still be usable. So then I tried some brass. So this is about 16 gauge brass sheet, and this came out really nice. We're going to use this one. It did take a lot of pressure. I did not anneal the brass first. I just tried it as is, and I had to when it was in the press. I had a block of steel on top of here. But I had to reposition this a couple of times to get the ends right over the ram, to get the ends to push all the way down. But it did a good job. So yeah, I'm liking that. We're going to use that one. So now what I've got to do, so I've got to square up the edges, clean them up a bit. That's no big deal. But I got to put the drain fitting in. So my plan is to use a copper male adapter. This is a 1/2 inch. It's 1/2 inch by something weird. It looks like 3/4, or yeah, 3/4 OD. So I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and bore a hole, cut a hole in here, and then I will either cut this down or slice it and fold some petals over to lock it into the our plate here, and then I'll soft solder it in. So that's my next step. Well, there was a bozo incident. Yeah, I thought I could just clamp this lightly in the mill vise and just go really light cut with an end mill to kind of square up the perimeter. Nope. So luckily this side gets clamped against the bottom of the chip tray, so that'll be all right. Just you know, it was looking nice, and you hate to leave some apprentice marks on a piece, but oh well. Yeah, I'm an apprentice, so I guess that's okay. All right, I'm gonna drill this hole. I'm gonna use an end mill. And let me show you how I'm going to set that up over in the mill. I've got a block of wood clamped in the vise, and then I've got our part clamped to the block of wood. So hopefully that'll keep things under control. And this is a 4-flute roughing end mill. It's center cutting. Okay. Just feeding up at the knee. I'm a little off center. Hold on, let me line this up a little better. Okay, let's try this again. I just eyeballed our center here. Well, I did use a scale, but it's not critical. Nice ball of brass wool. Oh yeah, that looks good. Off camera, I deburred that. So here's our fitting. Oh, yeah, I like that. I gotta cut that down, obviously, and get this cleaned up, ready for soldering. I like that. we're ready to solder. Everything's cleaned up, lightly sanded. Alright, so this is going to be tricky to do, to not have solder run out all over the brass. So I'm going to give it my best shot here. Use the paste flux. And I don't want to put on too much because the solder follows the flux. So I want to just keep it where I want the solder to go. It's just right along here. Okay. And then we'll put a little bit on here. Okay, that's plenty. In fact, that's probably even too much. I get a rag. Okay, let's try that. I'm going to do it from this side, like that. I'm using 50/50 old school solder. I don't want to overheat this. I'm going to try to get this copper heated up first. Overheat in the brass. When you start to see a little bit of sizzling on this paste flux, that usually means you're pretty close. See how that looks. We can always add more if we need to add. Wait till it solidifies. I think we're good. All right, you can see we got solder penetration coming out all the way around. All right, I think we're good. Just gonna wipe that off. Okay, little plumber's trick, you can use a little bit of your flux as a cleaner. Rub it in a little bit while it's still hot. And wipe it off while it's still hot. Okay, I like that. Alright, I'm going to let this cool off and give it a little bit of scrubbing with some soap and water. Then we'll take a look at it again. Okay, that came out pretty good. We got full penetration, we got a nice bead of solder all the way around. And then our inside. I think I'm going to come in with a chamfering tool and bring that down so it's flush. Man, that turned out great. Really happy with that. Too bad about this. It is what it is. Yeah, okay. Our little drainage sump is ready to go. I got a little carried away on the polishing. Oh well. So yeah, I think that's going to work good. So before we can put that on, we got to finish our stand. So I picked up one of these flanging tools from Harbor Freight, so I'm going to give it a try. That last little strip of metal that I got to put in, I need to put a flange on it to attach it to the other piece. So to finish that piece of sheet metal and then get it installed, and we'll take a look at where we're at. The way these flangers work, it's got an anvil here with a little offset that will create a flange the same thickness as the metal you're working with. You just work your way down the metal strip that you're working on. This is 16 gauge, so it's pretty heavy stuff. You guys can see that, so it's got a nice little offset there. Okay, and then it also has a hole punch, which you can use for your spot welding. So on your opposite mating piece, pretty neat little tool. I'm going to take this one back though, because if you look at this anvil, it's supposed to close up all the way, and it's coming up short. Yeah, so this one's, it's either not adjusted right or something's out of alignment. So I got our filler strip in here, and I just made it out of a piece of the original panel that came with the stand. You can see our little flange that we put on there. It did a number on the paint job. This is not a very good quality paint job that they did on that panel. Let me take you to the other side, show you what that looks like. I'm going to trim these screws off eventually. Alright, so there's the filler strip in there. Everything's tied in, secured. This cut on the top of the sheet metal is not very straight. But this is in a spot where no one's going to see it, and that cut was already there, so it is what it is. Okay guys, this video is getting pretty long, so I'm going to cut it off here, and we'll continue in the next episode. And I think what I'm going to do is shift gears and work on the backsplash. I want to get that built while it's easy to move this around, so I can get around behind here and work on it. And after we get the backsplash done, then we'll work on getting the chip tray transferred over to the new base and getting that drain fitting installed in there. Okay, hey, thanks a lot for stopping by, everybody, and we will see you on the next episode. If you can, hit that thumbs up button, and everybody have a Happy New Year.